He's got room now. It's Leo Messi. 1-1. Ronaldo turns to dribble. Brilliant footwork. And he's in goal for Cristiano Ronaldo. Balotelli. Aguero.
Welcome to the first episode of the Sports Freaks podcast with me, Daniel Majani.
And me, Kelvin Mwangi.
So here's what's lined up for the show. The Ballon d'Or winner, the Premier League review, and the FA Cup draw that was just meant the other day.
So let's go to the Ballon d'Or winner, Lionel Messi, for the 2019 Ballon d'Or. He was voted as the overall winner. What's your take on that?
Okay, I was actually very excited at the beginning because as of now, Messi now holds the record as the win of the most Ballon d'Ors actually. So with 6, he's now one ahead of Ronaldo, and it's actually funny that he said the other day that when Ronaldo equaled his record for 5 Ballon d'Ors, he felt actually sad. So I think that also portrays how competitive that guy is and how he has always been wanting to get just that one extra Ballon d'Or. But okay, let's not forget that it was also very, very controversial because a lot of people are thinking and are saying that the award was not merit-based because their argument is that Lionel Messi wasn't able to win the Champions League because a lot of people think that the big ears is what like supposed to entail the winner of the Ballon d'Or. So what do you actually feel about that? Do you feel like Van Dijk was robbed? And also a lot of people are actually saying that Mane was also robbed because there's no way Ronaldo was supposed to finish ahead of Mane because Mane was ranked at the 4th position while Ronaldo was given the 3rd position.
Absolutely. Van Dijk was robbed. If Modric could win this, then I think Van Dijk should win this. Yeah, Modric won it because he had the World Cup and also he had the Champions League with Real Madrid, but
Modric didn't win the World Cup. It was only a runners-up.
Yeah, the same thing with Van Dijk. He went to the runners-up of the European Nations League, but won the Champions League, which is the biggest prize in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what has been used to rank the best in the Ballon d'Or.
Mm-hmm.
And for Mane, I feel sad for him. It's true, Ronaldo didn't deserve any spot, but let's not forget Ronaldo helped Portugal the same year to win the Nations League and also the Serie A, of which Serie A is just a Juventus thing.
Another day in the office for Juventus.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually feel like for Messi, I actually feel like Messi deserves the Ballon d'Or because of his achievements, of his personal achievements as a person. Yes, we can say that Barcelona were not able to get the big years, especially because they were eliminated that night at Anfield. But what makes me think that Messi deserves this Ballon d'Or more than Van Dijk is because for Van Dijk, Liverpool was more of a team effort than a personal effort because I think that most of the people on that Liverpool squad were able to put in the same shift. Talk about Salah, talk about Mane. Both of these guys, together with Firmino, both of them, the 3 of them were able to score almost the same amount of goals for Liverpool. So I feel like giving Van Dijk the Ballon d'Or coming from Liverpool, it wouldn't be good for me because I feel like Mane, Firmino and Salah and even Fabinho was able to put in the same shift and the same effort at the end of the day. So for Messi to win the Ballon d'Or, I think it's very amazing for me. And okay, maybe let's hope maybe Van Dijk will be able to win it next year because as we speak right now, Liverpool are doing very well in the league. And also their campaign to retain the Champions League also looks very positive for them at the moment. So let's wait for next year.
I beg to differ with that because in 2006, Fabio Cannavaro won the Ballon d'Or and maybe the only defender to do that in history.
Yeah.
And not because he scored a lot of goals, because as we know, football is not just attack-minded. It also comes to the defense. If you're so good in defense, then yeah, you deserve it, because like no one dribbled past Van Dijk in the current year
Yeah.
in the Premier League. That's an achievement for him. And Liverpool have been good with Suarez and Sturridge and Sterling. There was a perfect trio in the front line, but defensively they've always lacked a leader, and that's where Van Dijk comes in. And you can see from his man marking to his contribution in some goals. He also scored some goals in the Champions League and also in the Premier League. So I think, to be fair enough, Van Dijk was robbed. That's my take on that.
But also don't forget that, for example, with Van Dijk, Alisson has also been very good. So when we speak of the defensive shift, we shouldn't just speak of Van Dijk alone, because Van Dijk has been doing pretty much well. Fabinho is the unsung hero at that club, because I feel like ever since Fabinho started getting those minutes, he protects the back four way much better than it was. Not to take anything away from Van Dijk, but I also feel like on a defensive perspective for Liverpool, it's between Fabinho, Van Dijk, and Alisson. And also, to come back to your point, don't forget Fabio Cannavaro had actually won the World Cup that year. So I think it's outrageous to even think of comparing the World Cup and the UEFA Champions League. But all in all, I think it was a very good year for Liverpool. I think Liverpool did exceptionally well, keeping in mind that in the top 10 Ballon d'Or list, I think they had four players, if I'm not wrong. So I think that's very good, because they are also putting the English football on the European map.
I think to end this discussion on whether it was fair enough or not fair enough, just to remind you, in the 2018 World Cup, Varane won the World Cup. He won the Champions League, but no Ballon d'Or for him.
Yeah. I actually feel like for the 2018 Ballon d'Or, it was actually one of those awards that I wasn't very happy about, because I feel like, actually for me, Modric went from being the most underrated footballer in the world to becoming the most overrated footballer in the world in a span of a month, because I think like the World Cup actually put Modric up there. Not to say that he wasn't the best midfielder around, but his performance with Croatia made people actually realize that this guy is very good. But at the end of the day, I think giving him the Ballon d'Or wasn't the best of decision, keeping in mind that it was a World Cup year, and also Varane had a very good year, actually winning the UEFA Champions League, winning the World Cup, and also he also won the Super Cup as well at the beginning of the season. So I can also agree with you on that.
Yeah, as a big Cristiano fan, Ronaldo was robbed.
Okay. I think at the end, for the last year Ballon d'Or,
Yeah.
that I completely agree, because Ronaldo had a very, very, very good year at last year. So I think we can agree on that. So on to our next topic, I think we also have to discuss the moment of the weekend. Of course, game week 14 was a very crazy week all over Europe, especially in the Premier League. So I think it's much fair for both of us at least to have that moment of the weekend that absolutely awed you and made you feel like, you know what, this Premier League is just one crazy league. So to start with you, Kelvin, so what do you think, like, what was your standout moment for the weekend?
There were a couple of moments,
Okay.
but the one that stood out most to me was the Jonjo Shelby's equalizer at almost the last few minutes
Wow, that was a screamer.
against Man City.
Uh-huh.
I knew City had won this after De Bruyne scored it, but all of a sudden the title race is getting hotter because Liverpool were just waiting for any slip from Man City. And I was so happy for that.
I actually, by that moment was actually very, very good because I think the fans at the St. James Park were treated to goals galore and not taking away anything from the KDB strike. It was also a very, 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 very good goal. I think both of them actually will be contender of goal of the month, if not goal of the season even. And I think the season is actually very, very crazy because keeping in mind that all the big clubs are actually conceding goals because clean sheets are very, very, very rare commodity nowadays in this season. So my moment of the weekend actually it comes from the King Power Stadium. I think Leicester absolutely owed me this weekend. They had a very, very good game, and Brendan Rodgers just showed us once again how a tactical man he is. I think Brendan Rodgers is a very, very, very good manager, and he's actually been underrated for such a long time, and I'm actually very happy that after being sacked, he stood up, put his chin up, went to Scotland, did his thing with Celtic, won the season unbeaten, and now he comes back again to the Premier League and is proving how he's a very good tactician because the game was actually not working out for them. He brings in Iheanacho, he comes into the match, changes the dynamics of the game, gets a goal, grabs an assist. And I think after seeing those celebrations by the Leicester players, I think at the end of the day, those guys, I actually had a feeling of what they did with the other manager, Claudio Ranieri, because the stadium was very happy. And I think that has to be my moment of the weekend because it has actually put Leicester up there. Like, I think it can be too early to call them the Premier League contenders, but I also feel like those are the kind of performances that wins you title. Maybe we can be having another Premier League reminder of what happened with Ranieri.
Oh,
this
the
season.
fairy tale?
Yeah, the fairy tale. Absolutely.
For me, when we go to the King's Stadium, it comes back to Jamie Vardy. I think no one can stop Vardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vardy is just a beast. He's just the next superstar, just underrated, but everyone knows Vardy's capabilities and he shows it week after week, and I don't expect it to stop. He's instrumental in that Leicester team. Though the team collectively is playing well, there's no like an individual performer. So for me, I will call Leicester a serious contender. People might underrate it. Yeah.
It's not too soon.
Not too soon.
I think I have to agree with you on the Vardy part. Vardy has been absolutely wonderful ever since Brendan Rodgers came in, because let's not forget that with the former manager Claude Puel, Vardy was actually not, he was hit and miss, off and on kind of season, but ever since Brendan has come, that spark that makes us know this is the real Vardy is absolutely back. Vardy is doing very well. I think in 2019 alone, he has scored 25 goals. I think only 3 players, that has to be Messi, Lewandowski, and one other that I can't remember, that are the only guys who have been able to score. I think it's Salah that they are the only guys who have been able to score more goals than Vardy. And I think Vardy will be very instrumental for Leicester going forward. And I think it's also, as much as you're saying it's not easy to pinpoint someone, I think I have to say that Wilfred Ndidi is having a phenomenal season at Leicester, because he's been able to come in and fit in those N'Golo Kante's shoes absolutely well, because a lot of people actually believed that no one could replace N'Golo Kante at that Leicester midfield. And I actually have to hail the guys who are in charge of getting the transfers done, because I feel like Wilfred Ndidi is also doing a perfect job protecting that backline. It's actually doing a very good job that you can't even realize that they sold Maguire to Manchester United.
Oh, what a flop.
No, I think Maguire is actually doing well, but he came to a Manchester United defense that was not very good, and let's not forget that Manchester United also don't have a proper defensive midfielder. So I think that United backline gets exposed over and over again. So I think until United get to purchase a good defensive midfielder, maybe in January or when the season ends, it will be very, very hard for us to know who the real Maguire is.
Thank you, but I still feel he's overpriced. That will remain in the hearts of the other clubs' fans, that he's overpriced. But let's shift to the EPL title race.
Wow. I think this season will... As much as we are seeing the league right now, it will be very difficult to say that there's an outright contender, keeping in mind the kind of margin that Liverpool are having at the table right now. So the title race has been very, very crazy this season so far. Liverpool are actually showing that they are in real business this season. I think it will be very hard to get them out of that table. Currently, actually, they are ahead with 8 points. I think 8 points ahead of Manchester City, and they have a game in hand. So should Leicester get a win tonight, maybe then they can maybe reduce that to another 8 points. But I think it's very tricky, keeping in mind that I feel Man City are not at their best so far this season. But you can never take Manchester City out of the title race, despite them being maybe number 3 at the moment, because Leicester are yet to play, and how Leicester are playing, I don't see them losing anytime soon. So I think it will be very crazy title race.
Yeah, for me, I think Liverpool have the upper hand and they are feeling confident at the moment. They are top of the table, like you said, 8 points clear of the second, who are Man City and Leicester, and they still have a game in hand one game just before Liverpool, before Man City, but the problem is their consistency when it comes to the end of the league. Last season, we saw them lose with a 7-point lead. Yeah, and it was very frustrating for me. Honestly, I didn't want Guardiola to come back and try to reclaim the Premier League for a second season in a row, but it happened. So I don't put Man City or Leicester off this title race, because I know consistency is key, and Liverpool haven't had a lot of injuries, maybe only for Salah, but they've had people who can complement goals. And again, this season they are not running riot from the front. They just have ugly wins, When you are title contenders, like serious title contenders, you tend to have those ugly wins where you win 2-1, 1-0, and you just go for the 3 points, and that's what Liverpool is all about.
Yeah, and speaking of consistency, I think Liverpool's demeanor will be very tested during this very busy schedule of the Christmas period, because they'll have to play 11 games in 40 days, and I think that will be the testing point for Liverpool, because I think winning all those games will be very hard. We've been seeing Salah has not been the best of himself ever since coming from that knock. I think just before the international break, he's not at his very best. So I think maybe the games are taking a toll on this Liverpool squad. So I have to say that if Liverpool will be able to maintain a good run and a good streak during this Christmas period, then come January, I think I'll put them up there as serious title contenders, because as we know, this Liverpool side, I think Manchester City have more of the winning mentality than them. So should they get themselves maybe under pressure to perform, I think maybe Liverpool, Man City can work in one way or another, maybe to just curb those points. And you never know, maybe by January even maybe the 8 points could be reduced to 4 points even. So we have a long time again. So just 15 games played. I think 23 more games to go. So I think there's a long way to go.
On Leicester, very serious contenders, as I said, because they've conceded the least goals in the Premier League.
Wow.
9 goals. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the defense, without Liverpool could concede the least goals, but they've conceded way more goals than Leicester, and Leicester has scored even a goal more than Liverpool. So you can see Leicester's consistency in all keys, from defense and attack. Yeah, it's a good show for a serious contender.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I can't put off Chelsea. They are way back, like 14 points behind Liverpool, but as you said, the league is crazy, and you never know when a team slips. I hope Liverpool doesn't slip to all that difference of 14 points for Chelsea to win the league. It seems impossible at the moment, but yeah, anything happens in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, but I think it's actually impossible for Chelsea to win the league, because first of all, I don't think they'll be able to curb those 14 points and get to Liverpool at the moment. And I also think that this is just an experimental season for Lampard, because he's just come in, he's working on his way around. Chelsea are actually just coming from a transfer ban where they cannot be able to sign people at the moment, I think, until the next summer transfer window. So I think that's actually what's working on Lampard's benefit, because at the moment Lampard doesn't have any pressure at all to perform, because people know that he's got to work with kids. And actually I have to say that he's doing a very good job with those kids. Abraham banging in goals like jokes, and Mason Mount has really become good. I can't also go without mentioning Tomori. He's actually not acting like a rookie defender, because I think he's very good actually at the moment. And I think once Rudiger gets fully fit and gets back to that defense, because I feel like Kat Zuma has to be the weak link at the defense at the moment, and I think once Rudiger comes back in, Tomori will be able to have a very good partner who he will be able to learn a lot from, that will help him in the near future. So at the moment, I feel like maybe Leicester can be able to squeeze in the title race at the end of the moment. I hope Man City and Liverpool will not be able to box them out. But for Chelsea, I think what Lampard should actually be concentrating in right now is just putting in the performance every week, mentoring those kids to do well and just to qualify for the top 4. But I don't think I can rate Chelsea as title contenders at the moment.
Let's shift to the top 4 race. So we see Chelsea at number 4 with 26 points. Then there's Crystal Palace with 21 points, and Tottenham are 6th there with 20 points. Wolves are 7th with 20 points. Sheffield 8th with 19 points. So we're wondering where Arsenal and Manchester United are, who are the real top 4 contenders.
Yeah.
Feel like Crystal Palace will eventually drop points, and Wolves will drop some points also. But what's your take on the top 4?
I actually feel like the top 4, I call it like the battle of the jokers, because this group of people, that is Tottenham Hotspur, Arsenal and Manchester United, and also Chelsea at some extent, are not at their best at the moment, and I feel it's not very good for the clubs, especially for the fans who always have very high expectations for the clubs at the end or at the start of every season. And I feel like shouldn't they know maybe sooner or later even the likes of Wolves will be replacing them there, because I think it's very shaming for Manchester United, for the likes of Manchester United and Arsenal, to have teams like Crystal Palace and Wolves and Sheffield United being on top of them at the moment, because it's actually very shameful, keeping in mind, like, for a club like Manchester United, their wage bill alone can be able to pay the whole of Sheffield United, and we're speaking about the wage bill of single players for the likes of Pogba, the likes of Mesut Ozil, the likes of Aubameyang. And I feel like Arsenal and Manchester United don't have any reason to be losing at the moment, because as much as they have rocky times here and there's no way you can tell me that Sheffield United have a better squad than Manchester United. So I feel like it's high time for these clubs to be serious at the moment, because if they don't, at the moment, I think even Manchester United are not even sure if they can qualify for the Europa League next season.
Wow.
And that's not very good for the club.
For me, we saw Tottenham with their new manager. They've won 3-3. They've won 2 in the Premier League and 1 in the Champions League. That's a good show of resurrection. And Arsenal, they just sacked their good evening manager a week ago.
Yeah.
Unai Emery is gone, and they have a new manager who's Lombard, their former player. But the same Arsenal problems. I think they drew. It was an easy draw, and may they thank Bernard Leno. I'm so sad being an Arsenal fan in this era. For Manchester United, they still have their coach on. We don't know for how long, because they're just inconsistent. We saw them lose in the Europa League, and they've also drawn against Villa. It was a very tight game, and Jack Grealish,
What a goal
from Grealish. It made the gear just look at the ball. Yeah, so being 3 points adrift from Crystal Palace, which is 5th, that's for Manchester, and 2 points adrift for Arsenal from Crystal Palace. I feel they can catch up, but remembering Chelsea is 8 points clear and 7 points to Arsenal, then it gets tricky to know whether they'll join the top 4 race, but anything happens in the Premier League.
But I don't think in any time in any world that Arsenal and Manchester United will be able to finish in the top 4. I can give Tottenham the benefit of doubt because of signing Mourinho. We know Mourinho is always a winner, but I think for clubs like Spurs and Arsenal and Manchester United, the problem just goes beyond the manager, because if you keep in mind, Arsenal just put in the same performance under Unai Emery with their new manager Freddie Ljungberg at the Emirates, and I think it's very distressful for their fans, because you can't have defenders for the clubs like Arsenal playing very, very poor football, poor marking from the likes of Mustafi.
Wow. Don't mention Mustafi. That guy's a clown. They
just don't know where to be, at what moment of the game should they mark, at what moment of the game should they put the offside trap. So I think for clubs like Spurs, for clubs like Manchester United, have to really pull up their socks, especially Manchester United, where I don't see them getting any result at the moment. They are 10th at the moment. They are playing Spurs tonight. I don't see them winning that game. They're having a derby on the weekend versus the noisy neighbors. I don't see them winning that game again. And it gives me the question that what's the Manchester United board waiting for? Maybe to to sack Ole because Mourinho wasn't given the same time that Ole is being given at the moment. I think it's very shameful for a club like Manchester United to have 4 wins in 4 months and they have not been able to win any game in December. So I think that's very shameful.
I know how frustrated it can be for you, especially being a Man United fan. I know you've always been very consistent because Ferguson made you cheer every week.
Yeah.
And since then, there's no cheering anymore. Mourinho at least tried his best and got you guys a Europa League, but it's not satisfying being a Manchester United at the moment.
Absolutely
so
true.
I will cap that off by saying I just heard Man U are sending their lawyers to try and stop the Man U versus Man City game. They feel it won't be fair.
Yeah.
While drawing with teams like Aston Villa, who they've beaten mercilessly before now, they feel like Man City will run them. Remember, Man City is just ran Chelsea down last season, like 6-0. So they send their lawyers now to try and stop that game.
I think for Manchester United, they just have to manage the game on the weekend. Just try to keep the results as respectable as they can. Yeah, because if they fail to do that, Man City can run riot. But also, let's not forget that despite Ole putting in a string of very poor performances, he's also been performing very well versus the top 6. Manchester United is yet to lose versus any top 6 side this season. So should that Lady Luck be present again tonight versus Spurs and on the weekend versus Manchester City? I think they can be I think the best United can get in these 2 games is 2 points. And I think that will be also very good for Ole because it will extend his stay, but by at least a week or so maybe. So I think it's very tight, but let's wait and see.
Let's jump shift to the La Liga.
Yeah.
Where I think Barcelona are top of the league now.
I'm not actually surprised that Barcelona are the top of the league of the season. It was expected from the word go, but I think my surprise package has to be Real Madrid because they are joint best in the league at the moment, and I feel like Madrid. Actually, everyone had written Madrid off because of how they started the season. They started the season very poorly, and a lot of people expected that Real Madrid wouldn't even be contenders at the moment. But I feel like they're actually doing well because they are tied at 31 points with Barcelona, winning 9 games during the same time, with Barcelona having 10 wins. But I feel one will have to leave the other. I think it's the 3rd week of December when there'll be the El Clasico, and I think that's when we will really get to know who the real contender of the title will be. But I feel like so far it's a tight race which extends all the way from the title race all the way to the top 4 because it's very tight, having Getafe, Valencia, Atletico Madrid, Bilbao and Sociedad and Sevilla. So it's like a whole contingent of teams having just a difference of 3 points between them. So I think it's very tight at the moment.
I owe Real Madrid success to one man, Karim Benzema. He's resurrected.
Yeah, I actually feel like Benzema's progress, I'm sorry to say this, but I feel like Benzema's progress was always hindered by Cristiano Ronaldo, because ever since Ronaldo left Real Madrid, we've been able to see a whole new reincarnated Benzema because he's putting in goals every weekend. He's actually, I don't know where Real Madrid will be without him at the moment.
When you go to the list of the top scorers, you can see again Karim Benzema is the top scorer of the La Liga with 10 goals and 4 assists, which is a good number for him at this stage of the competition. Then seconded by Lionel Messi, which we expect him to be even the top scorer by now, but he had an injury, so I would excuse that for him. He has 9 goals and 5 assists.
Yeah.
Then there's Moreno, who has 8 goals and 2 assists. And then there's a surprise package here. Lucas Perez, the guy.
The Arsenal flop.
Yeah. I feel Wenger should have been patient with the guy because he was a real deal. They even called him the next Vardy while signing him. We were so excited as Arsenal fans to have him in our team, and now I see him running the show in La Liga and kind of feel bad because we don't have him, but he's putting a good show for Alaves with 8 goals and 2 assists.
And that brings me back again to the issue of Arsenal and Manchester United, because I feel like it's not more of the players but more of the systems. I think these two clubs don't have a working system whereby a player can flourish in whatever they do, because for a club like Manchester United, we get good players are coming to the club and they don't perform as they were performing in the previous clubs. I'm talking about the likes of Maguire and Wan-Bissaka, who are very good. So I think Manchester United and Arsenal actually have to work on their systems, because that's why we are seeing stories like Lucas Perez going back to La Liga and rejuvenating his career all over again. The likes of Chris Smalling going to Roma. And actually Smalling is being talked as one of the best defenders at the moment, because he's doing very, very, very good at Roma. And look at Lukaku right now, banging goals for fun. He has 10 goals at the moment, while he was at United, he wasn't able to get the same numbers or something close to that, because he's got 10 goals at the moment, and we have not even played half of the season yet.
I like Lukaku a lot. You guys complained a lot that he's not the type of sprinting forward that you guys wanted to complement with Martial and Rashford, but to me, I like Lukaku very much. But again, the main point is Lukaku can't lead the line alone. Lukaku has to have
he needs a support system.
Yeah, like a second striker. Or Lukaku can play well as a second striker, just like Giroud can play in the French national team. So, like we said, the recruitment systems at Manchester United and Arsenal, they just need some refurbishment, because you can't expect to lose Lukaku and Alexis Sanchez at one window, and then you are led by youngsters like Greenwood and Rashford and Martial. That's why there's some few goals in the Premier League for Manchester United, but again, just feels like they should concentrate on more of the future, like have a long-term player. They have a long-term plans for a player, so that every season that player is just like, look at Barcelona. They bought Suarez and they still have him on board, even if sometimes he doesn't score as much as they would wish him to, just because he knows the chemistry of the team. So when Manchester United and Arsenal are signing players, they should look at how the players integrate with the other players and form a chemistry.
Yeah. And speaking of chemistry of teams, there's one man in Italy who seems to have gotten the right chemistry to keep Inter Milan on top of the table for the first time this season, and that man's name is none other than Antonio Conte. I think Inter Milan have been very wonderful this season. I think they've only lost one match, and that was against the arch rivals Juventus.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think Antonio Conte is doing an exceptional job at Inter Milan. They're currently on top of the table with 37 points. They have 5 wins in 5. And how do you see? Do you see like this will be that season that Inter Milan will get to win the Scudetto again?
It's kind of hard in the Serie A. It's a Juventus thing. To me, Napoli has been there. They have been contending very well, and for like 2 seasons they were second to Juventus for long till like the 30th game of the league, but it's always a sad story to see Juventus consistent enough to carry on till they have the leagues in their hands. So it's tricky for Inter Milan. Last season they had a good run and they actually had Icardi there who was performing very well, but at some point they lost grip. So to me, I feel they'll still lose grip in this.
Towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
I actually have to congratulate Antonio Conte, because I love how a disciplinarian of a man he is, because he came in, he decided who he wants to stay, who he wants to leave, and that's why the likes of Raja Nainggolan and the likes of Mauro Icardi, despite them being very good players, Antonio Conte decided, you know what, it's time for me to release this guy so that I can also have time for myself to build a team that I want. And it has only taken him a very short time to change how Inter Milan play. They play a different game altogether from what they used to do last season. So I think I really have to congratulate this man a lot. He also works very well with injuries. At the moment, they have almost 4 midfielders out, the likes of Sensi, the likes of Nicolo Barella, but whoever comes into that midfield, I think Brozovic will be able to handle the midfield well at the moment until the rest of the guys come back. But I think the man of the moment so far at the Serie A has to be Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku, because those two guys have been able to form such a wonderful partnership on top. And right now, I think both of them are among the top scorers at the league at the moment, because they are doing very, very well, scoring goals, assisting each other's goals, and I think their chemistry and their partnership will be very essential if Inter Milan are to win anything this season.
Talking of the man of the moment in the Serie A, I think to me the man of the moment in the Serie A is Ciro Immobile. The guy is just the Lewis Hamilton of the Serie A.
True.
Yeah, he's running riot, 17 goals in 14 games. That's a return of 1 goal per game plus some extras. And then he also has 5 assists, which are the most assists in the Serie A, tied with Gomez and Nainggolan for the assists. So 17 goals and 5 assists, that's a very good return in 14 games. That means that's 22 goals. He's contributed in 22 goals in 14 games. That's crazy.
Those are actually wonderful stats, and I always feel like Ciro Immobile has been a very underrated striker for a very long time. I think the other day, if not the start of the season or the tail end of last season, he was also able to get past the 100 mark goals for Lazio in a record time for the club. So I think Immobile is a very good striker. And also, speaking of Immobile, Lazio are also doing very, very well at the moment, as they are third on the Serie A table, having a form similar to that of Inter Milan with the 5 wins on the bounce. And I actually feel like they always just lose it somewhere during the season, because they always have these good runs in between the season. They have good players, the like of Savic. I think Lucas Leiva is also doing very well ever since leaving Liverpool for Lazio. So I think, and I hope that maybe this season they can be able to do well and maybe pin a Champions League spot towards the end of the season.
Yeah, for Lazio, they have 6 wins in 6 in the Serie A, and that's a good return. But as I said, consistency is the key. That's why Juventus wins the Serie A, because they're so consistent.
Yeah.
Then when we go to the Bundesliga, can see the man himself, Lewandowski, is doing pretty good, but his team is not good enough because they are currently fourth in the league with from 13 games. They have 23 points. That's 5 points adrift of number one, which is Borussia Mönchengladbach. And talking of that, the Bundesliga is tight. The difference between number one, number two, number three, and number four is just 4 points. So, and also Dortmund is close in fifth. So that's a difference of 5 points from the number one to the number five. So the title race for the Bundesliga is pretty tight.
Yeah. I feel like it's a wave all over Europe. I think it's not just in Bundesliga alone, because just apart from Liverpool alone, who are actually running riot at the moment, all the other tables are actually very close, and I feel it's because of the financial might that most clubs are able to possess nowadays. So you find like it's not like in the past where Bayern Munich, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Juventus were the only club that were able to attract big names and get big names. But nowadays, clubs like Leipzig, clubs like West Ham, clubs like Monaco can be able to sign 40 million, 50 million worth of players. And I feel they are also becoming very competitive at the moment. And you find like these clubs are not afraid of the big clubs anymore, because they also want to be put on the same table with the other big clubs. So I feel that explains why the gap between the first club at the Bundesliga and the sixth club, which is SC Freiburg, it's only 6 points. So I feel like these clubs are actually becoming better and better, because seeing a club like Bayern Munich losing to Bayer Leverkusen at home, I think that's very shocking.
For the top scorers, we see Lewandowski with 16 goals in 13 games. That's crazy to me, but he always scores goals for fun. Mm-hmm. Then we also see Timo Werner, who has 13 goals and 5 assists. That's a good return also. Then Hennings is third with 10 goals. But overall, the title race, we kind of all know how it ends, because Bayern Munich will finally regain their spot.
In one way or the other.
They've done this countless times. Yeah, so let's jump to the League One. The League One, we see PSG. PSG is at the top of the table. As expected. They have 33 points from 14 games with 2 games in hand. It's not a fun league for me to watch a lot, because PSG always runs riot, so there is no serious contender there. Marseille is second with 31 points from 16 games. And Bordeaux is third with 26 points from 16 games, and Lille is fourth with 25 points from 16 games. When we look at the list of the top scorers, we would expect Mbappe to be top there, but due to injuries, he hasn't clicked and scored goals. But there's Moussa Dembele, who has 10 goals, and he's always phenomenal wherever he goes.
And always linked to big clubs every transfer window.
Yeah. We thought he would come to the Premier League after transferring from Celtic, but shock on us, he went to Olympique Lyonnais. And now we have Ben Yedder. Ben Yedder is actually an exciting player. From his time in Sevilla, he wouldn't shine a lot in La Liga. He tried his best, especially he ran riot against Manu.
Was it in the Champions League?
Yeah, it was in the Champions League in Mourinho's season. But he's now second with 9 goals and 1 assist. Then we have Diallo, who has 9 goals. Then we have Osimhen, who has 8 goals and 3 assists. And then closely fifth, we have the man himself, Memphis Depay, Yeah, he's just a showman. That's why I would expect him to be even the top scorer. And there's one surprise package here, who's Slimani. I remember he was a flop in Leicester,
Yeah.
but now here we can see him with 6 goals and 8 assists.
Yeah.
Wow. 8 assists at the top. Number of assists in the League One, and coming from a striker, it's kind of crazy to me.
I actually call the French Ligue 1 the League of Flops, because I always feel like it's the perfect place for someone to go and rejuvenate his career, because I feel like it's not a very hard league. It's always like very easy to play in the French Ligue 1. So that's why you find players like, actually they are very good players at the moment. Not that they were bad before, but these are players who their previous things were not able to work on their previous clubs. Look at the guys like Memphis Depay, look at the guys like Slimani, Ben Yedder, even Angel Di Maria, because he was not able to have a good spell at Manchester United, and in one way or the other he found himself at PSG. Even Icardi just chose to go to the French Ligue 1, and is actually doing very, very well at the moment. Even the Paris Saint-Germain coach Thomas Tuchel has actually come out to speak how he's having a very terrible time having to choose who has to start on that front line, because he's spoiled of choices with Neymar, with Kylian Mbappe, with Icardi, and even Angel Di Maria, because all these players are very good players. On their day, they are all world-class players, but just coming to decide who will start this match, who will not start on that match, it's very tricky for him. But all in all, I always feel like the League 1 is just a straightforward league. So Paris Saint-Germain will just win the league always. So whoever decides to run a riot and maybe chase them, I think it will just be a race of someone trying to shoot you with a gun on the other one with an arrow. So I think PSG will just win the league at the end of the day.
Yeah, sorry to hear that the League 1 is a league of flops. Thankfully, you didn't say that in French. They will have killed you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so on other news,
the FA draw was just done the other day.
yeah.
So, and these are some of the fixtures. So, Arsenal will host Leeds at the Emirates, while Wigan Athletic will travel to the King Power Stadium to face Leicester FC,
Yep.
while Manchester City will face League 1 side Port Vale, while Manchester United have been given a draw with their worst nightmare, which has to be Wolves, because they eliminated them in the last season's campaign, while Chelsea will host Nottingham Forest at the Stamford Bridge, and Liverpool will have a Merseyside derby. And I think this is one of the matches to watch on this FA Cup third round, while Tottenham will travel all the way to Middlesbrough to host them for the FA third round. And I have a question, Kelvin.
Yeah.
Why is it that people feel, me included, that Man City tend to get easy draws year in, year out? Because most of the time they are always drawn against League 1 teams, League 2 teams, and championship teams.
To cap on that, I feel like it's just a draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me it's just a draw. It feels bad that they always get easy teams, but I don't know who's behind the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being with us for that little time that it was much time, but it always feels little while discussing the greatest sport in the world, which has to be football. So, until next time, from me, Daniel Majani,
And me, Kelvin Mwangi.
keep it sporty and keep it the Sports Freaks podcast. Thank you and goodbye.
He's got room now. It's Leo Messi. 1-1. Now they turn to dribble. Brilliant footwork.